Look, you can't deny it, folks. There is a key player in the case of missing teen Sebastian Rogers that has published knowingly false information in the form of breaking news and new leads that keep getting righteously debunked for their falsity almost as soon as the newest tweet is sent. You just can't deny it. Why? Why is this happening? In this video, I'm going to look at some of this disinformation, and we're going to attempt to answer the question of why. Why does a firm with the word intelligence in their name regularly put out anti-intelligence? So anti that it's so easily debunked. For example, just last week, AtNight said they had special pictures from a special group of satellites from a special partner who hadn't even launched their satellites yet. When legitimate creators debunked that, another absolute falsity was put out about parking lot footage at the Texas Roadhouse, where there's some green hoodie guy supposedly interacting with Katie Proudfoot, Sebastian's mom. Again, within minutes, this was completely debunked. This has been a pattern with AtNight Intelligence since it first came out as a player in the investigation of Sebastian's disappearance. You would think that at a certain point, AtNight would say, whoa, maybe I should stop humiliating myself by publishing stuff that immediately gets tossed in the virtual toilet bin. But nope, they keep going. Another thing you can't help but notice in all of the stuff that gets published from this group is that it has a very specific and easily identifiable bias against Sebastian's mom and stepdad, Katie and Chris Proudfoot. Further to this post about the satellite images, this update, which looks very professional, says they are focusing their search on the corners of Hartsville, Pike, and Enoch Way, which just so happen to be where members of the Proudfoot family live. So they are literally sending very loud dog whistles in a certain direction. In another post from AtNight Private Intelligence, we hear that before the heartbreaking disappearance of Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers, his mother, Mrs. Proudfoot, captured what would unknowingly become his final moments through photos and videos. Sebastian sharing a simple meal, seemingly ordinary moment, now forever etched in time. Though she, and they bold this, okay? This is very important to them. Though she took these photos and videos, they never made it past that table. They were not shared, not posted, left frozen in that moment of innocence. Clearly leading us to believe that some shadiness was taking place when a mother sitting across from her son took a couple photos of him and then did not share them with the rest of the world in the immediate aftermath of her son's disappearance. As if she actually did something wrong there. We don't know if she never shared those images and photos. And in fact, we know probably that the police have those images and determine that they are not important to solving the case, and nor are they important for the public to be aware of. And here is a section from one of the many missing flyers that gets put out by AtNight Intelligence, where in the second sentence, they are implicating his mother. The second sentence of this says, his mother allegedly discovered him missing when she went to wake him for school. So what they're saying is that she allegedly discovered him missing when she went to wake him from school. That must mean that something else happened and she's lying with no proof, no evidence of what they are saying. This post goes on to try to implicate Venezuelan gangs that are seeing an upsurge in Tennessee. But have we seen any other information related to these Venezuelan gangs? Or is this just a clear attempt to get the algorithm going on another thing that a lot of people are talking about online? I am by far not the only person who has noticed that AtNight is regularly pushing biased disinformation to the public. It has been called out by many channels, but most of those channels call this misinformation. I respectfully beg to differ. This is not misinformation, folks. This is straight up disinformation. Misinformation is when false information is published or shared without malice or not necessarily knowing that it's wrong. Disinformation is the malicious sharing of false information. When AtNight, quote unquote, intelligence shares hyper slowed down footage from the Texas Roadhouse parking lot and says that there's a nefarious exchange happening between Katie Proudfoot and some hoodie guy, when you can clearly see that hoodie guy was just a stranger in a car next to Katie's who was moving aside so she could get in her car, you must see AtNight's release for what it is: malicious disinformation on the Sebastian Rogers case to lean the court of public opinion toward a continued witch hunt of Katie and Chris Proudfoot. Witch hunts are not fact and evidence-driven investigations by unbiased professionals. Witch hunts are campaigns that are designed to hunt for and find evidence that will persecute a targeted person or group and will ignore facts and evidence that would normally exonerate their target. A group on a witch hunt could be given a rock-solid alibi and 50 witness testimonials which show beyond a reasonable doubt that their witch hunt target is innocent, but for whatever reason, be it financial or emotional, they will ignore that evidence and continue that witch hunt. So now you might say, well, if there is some sort of group out there doing a witch hunt, that witch hunt, with its constant pressure on certain persons of interest and with its ever-growing rewards for information, could eventually lead to answers in what happened to Sebastian. Sorry, but you couldn't be any further from right. In fact, from what we just learned in the Netflix documentary, if it weren't for the witch hunt that Boulder police employed on the Ramseys, specifically Patsy Ramsey, we may have John Benet Ramsey's killer today. The Boulder police detectives put out disinformation about John Benet's murder in the papers specifically to put a pressure campaign on the Ramseys to come forward and confess. Don't believe me? It was said, it was admitted to in a deposition with one of the detectives. I'm reading from a transcript of Detective Steve Thomas from 2001 from his deposition in a civil litigation case. If you want to see this actual deposition taking place with the detective's body language and the way he answers these questions, go look at the Netflix documentary because it can't be played on YouTube. Question: was there any plan or strategy on the part of Boulder Police Department or any other law enforcement agencies to try to put pressure on the Ramseys through the public? Answer: I think so. Question: and the FBI was involved. Bill Hagemeyer, Mr. Hagemeyer, was involved in the formulation of this plan of public pressure on the Ramseys, wasn't he? Answer: I believe there were discussions with the FBI, yes, about how to exert some public pressure on people who are not cooperating, yes. Clearly, this effort failed in epic proportions. We still have no clear idea of who killed John Benet Ramsey, but many of us, including me for a really long time, were under the impression that this disinformation that was put out by Boulder police was true and led me to believe that Patsy Ramsey was potentially somehow involved in her own daughter's murder. So now you might say, well, obviously witch hunts don't work and they divert police resources away from finding out who the real killer is, right? So why would anybody ever want to use a witch hunt when they truly want to find a missing person or a murderer? You would think that people would think that logically, but we're not seeing that. In the age of social media, organizationally driven witch hunts can be very successful if you measure success by money earned and clicks clicked. And this gets us to another level of why this is happening. We've just shown that a major witch hunt could be the reason we still don't know who killed somebody, right? But the AtNight Intelligence Agency happily deploys disinformation, which is lapped up by certain true crime channels and carried on as if it's true. But since we've seen that this doesn't work, what is their end goal? Well, I'm sorry to break it to y'all, but it's money. See right here? Look at this. This is taken directly from AtNight's website. It says that as of September 2024, just a few months ago, AtNight will not accept a retainer of less than $500,000. I'm sorry, I just can't not laugh. $500,000. On another page of its website, AtNight says that it accepts retainers of between $25,000 and $1 million. Okay? AtNight does this for money. They are a paid operative toward a certain agenda. And since they are so actively driving a narrative against certain parties in the case, we can presume that at some point, someone paid AtNight Media at least $25,000 for this agenda. I don't think we can know definitively who cut that initial retainer for AtNight Intelligence, but we can definitively say that whoever cut that check had a specific agenda, and it was to make criminal suspects out of Katie and Chris Proudfoot. We can also say definitively that whoever cut the check for AtNight Intelligence wanted certain content creators to be silenced, because AtNight Intelligence is the first named plaintiff in the RICO injunction that was filed in Pennsylvania. And since Seth Rogers is the third plaintiff named in the lawsuit, we can easily surmise that Seth Rogers, the father of Sebastian Rogers, is heavily on board with whatever AtNight Intelligence is doing in the media. People who defend this squirrel lawsuit say that they support it because it's horrible to say mean things about a missing child's father. But that explanation does not hold water, because some of the plaintiffs in this squirrel suit have engaged in some of the worst and most horrific slander against true crime victims and their families that I've ever seen. How can we forget that Bullhorn Betty, one of the plaintiffs in this lawsuit, got Don Wells, the father of missing Summer Wells, fired from his job, and that she is facing criminal charges for violations of a protection order put on her for stalking and harassing the Proudfoots.
Janice, what did you do with your daughter?
God, you have a chance to come out
and talk to us. You've been calling us for weeks telling us you want to talk. You want to talk to us.
Meet us here.
Meet us here. Well, we're here. Come talk to us. Come talk to us.
Even if you're here screaming and somebody stop what they're doing and turn and looking because you're here screaming, yelling, that's technically deemed disorderly conduct. You can technically go to jail for that and be charged with it. All right. So with this man, I would just let this man do his work. Listen, we all want to find her. We all care about her. All right.
Are you wondering why your mind is spinning? Well, part of that is on purpose. It's called cognitive dissonance, or just complete breakdown of critical thinking and logic. And that is what disinformation providers count on, that you will be confused and you will stop trying to figure things out and you will just pass on the information as it comes out because it's too hard to decipher. But when you have content creators with the dirtiest hands on the internet screaming for justice against the same exact thing they've done to several other people in front of our very own eyes, you have cognitive dissonance. At this point, I think we've pretty clearly answered the question of why AtNight Intelligence is doing this. In my informed opinion, it's an income-driven witch hunt toward a specific agenda that will not, I repeat, will not assist in the true search for Sebastian Rogers. But how do we explain why any of this false information is believed to be true and accurate by so many people? Why? Why would so many people be convinced that Katie is doing a handoff when she's clearly just passing by a stranger? Why would so many people look at a totally normal and innocent meal at Texas Roadhouse with Katie Proudfoot and Sebastian Rogers and interpret every single thing Katie does as shady and incriminating? Well, I'll tell you why. Because the channels that immediately go live to review the information AtNight Intelligence has issued and then repeat with emphasis the dark shadow that each post casts over Katie and Chris Proudfoot, they get a financial benefit through views and engagement on their channels. And they also get the benefit of not being implicated in a lawsuit that attempts to silence them. And let me tell you something, folks. The channels that repeat this disinformation, they know exactly what they're doing. Just as AtNight Intelligence knows they're publishing disinformation, the creators who republish it and embellish upon it using the exact shade and allegations against Katie and other private citizens, they know what they're doing. And they keep doing it because they know it works to get them more engagement on their channels, regardless of the truth. It doesn't work to help find the kid, but it sure helps their channels. In case you aren't aware, let me tell you some things that are very unique about true crime audiences in high-profile cases. New high-profile cases drive new interest from viewers who weren't previously hip to the live true crime experience and how shady content creators can be, even when they present themselves as innocent and virtuous and wanting to get to the truth. New viewers come into live chats of creators believing that the creator has the same intention as them to get to the truth. These new audiences are rarely aware that true crime channels will actively engage in unethical practices to keep that gullible new audience engaged. So after the initial stages of a high-profile case dies down and there aren't as many views to be gotten from real new information, legitimate channels that only report on news and facts will move on to the next case. But unethical, shady true crime channels will go as far as to make up or even falsify new information. And there is a long list of ways to do that. Let's take the Idaho 4 case as an example. In the year after 4 college students were brutally murdered in their beds in Idaho, the most corrupt true crime channels pushed false and salacious details about the victims and their friends, gaining new audiences and views they never had before or imagined, probably. Months and months and hours were spent poring over footage from a food truck where there was, guess who, a hoodie guy that looks suspicious enough for these channels to make him the murderer. These channels spent weeks doxing Hoodie Guy, chasing him down, finding his information on media, and directly implicating him in the case, reportedly causing him to take a trip to Africa to get away from it all. The police finally came out and said that Hoodie Guy was not a suspect, but that didn't matter. In fact, it actually encouraged some channels to prey on the distrust of law enforcement and say, well, that must mean we're on the right track. And they doubled down on the witch hunt of food truck Hoodie Guy. A few weeks later, the police captured Brian Kohberger. And Brian Kohberger was not on anyone's radar. It was especially not on the radar of any of these true crime channels who were chasing down Hoodie Guy, because they were all too busy trying to incriminate Hoodie Guy or one of the roommates or one of the people they saw at one point in the vicinity of the murder house. And because they might have walked by one day when a camera was on, they must be suspects. The point I'm trying to make is this. When channels put out false information, and that false information is debunked by a legitimate creator or law enforcement themselves, and they keep doing it, you must see that channel for what it is. Yes, they may be out here saying that they want justice or they want to find the missing person, but their actions speak differently and more loudly. Now that the case of missing Sebastian Rogers has failed to reveal true new information, some channels, with the help of false information pushed by a highly paid intelligence agency, are knowingly publishing disinformation because it helps them get more views and more money. So please ask yourself, is this the best way to go about finding Sebastian Rogers or any missing person? Did it work for the detectives in finding out who killed John Benet Ramsey? Did it help find suspected killer Brian Kohberger? Or did it just distract them so hard that they ignored evidence which would point to the real killer? Let's say you do believe that an active witch hunt will lead to finding Sebastian Rogers. Let's say you are one of the people who is prone to believing the information coming out from AtNight Intelligence. I have one last question for you. Really? This is your guy?
Nicholas Hasafathal, self-described chief content officer at something called YC News. The Delaware County District Attorney says Nick the Hat, as he's known, was not a journalist, but a fraud.
This defendant manipulated the facts and created a story all made up by himself.
Prosecutors say Hatzafathow falsified documents to pose as a New York Times reporter and Good Morning America producer to ask the DA's office for comment on a racist email purportedly sent by an officer of the county's adult probation and parole office. The prosecutor says Hatzafathow created the phony email and tried to pass it off as a legitimate scandal to be reported on his website, perhaps in an attempt to disparage the probation officer who had supervised him after a past conviction.
In one fell swoop, he attempted to decimate years of well-earned and good reputations.
Says the district attorney of Hatzafathow.
He created this email. He created this false narrative. He created this problem and is now going to face the consequences.
Also seized from that home in Broomall a stolen police-issued taser.
Here's another thing that a lot of new true crime audiences probably don't know about the true crime genre. This genre is teeming with criminals pretending to be reformed vigilantes for justice. And here we have a guy who not very long ago got out of jail for falsifying information against his probation officer. In other words, he's a convicted fraudster. I mean, this dude is literally on probation, or maybe he just got off probation. I'm not sure. I don't know. But the point is, these are recent charges for the exact same behavior. And they want us to believe that he's so reformed and so tied into the right side of justice that he's pumping out legitimate information that just happens to be debunked within moments of him publishing it. Sorry, there is literally no evidence that the proprietor of AtNight Intelligence has all of a sudden stopped being a fraud. In fact, he's actively showing us with every false and quickly debunked post that he's happy to be a fraud. You know why? Because it works. It doesn't work to solve cases. It works to put money in his pocket and the pockets of the channels that legitimize the disinformation with their ignorant and biased analysis. Unfortunately, I don't think the true crime genre will ever free itself of shyster organizations like AtNight Intelligence, because there are always criminals looking for more ways to scam $1 or $2 out of innocent people. And the internet is a great way to do that. When all you know is crime, it's not so far-fetched to create a true crime channel pretending to be reformed and doing the right thing, but actively doing the wrong thing, while new gullible audiences are there to share their disinformation for them and drive more clicks, views, and money to their page. All we can do is educate ourselves in the true crime genre that these fraudsters exist. These fraudsters pop up in every high-profile true crime case. These fraudsters employ old and new tactics to fool and manipulate their audiences. And unless you employ some of your own critical thinking skills to question or outright reject some of their claims, you will continue to be one of the useful idiots who helps a destructive, money-making, witch-hunting agenda, not a fact-finding agenda, and not an agenda that will actually find this missing child. So please, 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 before you share your next post or go live with information about any true crime case, especially the Sebastian Rogers case, where much of the information is being pushed by a convicted fraudster who was most likely paid at least $25,000, according to his website, ask yourself whether the information will really help find Sebastian. If the information was quickly debunked as false and you're about to share it, you are actively hampering the investigation, not helping it. And if you repeat the heavily biased narrative that is published with the older misleading digital evidence from AtNight Intelligence, and you repeat it without exploring the truth yourself, you are actively thwarting justice and impeding the truth search for Sebastian Rogers. I'm going to close this out by asking again, really? This is your guy?
Well, Nick Hatzafathow, known by his nickname Nick the Hat, was found guilty of fabricating a racist email from a Delaware County probation officer. An Action News investigation first brought you this story 2 years ago in an exclusive report. Well, he runs a website called YC News, which is short for Young Constituents. Prosecutors say he altered an email to include racist language, then published the email on his website. He was found guilty of identity theft, forgery, and other related charges. Sentencing is set for next month.
Seriously, if you really want to help Sebastian, stop sharing malicious bullshit about innocent private citizens. Thank you for watching. Please Hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and stay safe until the next video. Peace out.